Hello, I'm Cindy Folkers with Beyond Nuclear. With this presentation, I want to focus on some industry myths used to downplay the danger tritium poses to health and the environment. Tritium is not safe. A recent literature review concludes that tritium taken into the body can have significant impacts, including DNA damage, impaired development, reduced fertility and longevity, and elevated risks of cancer and other diseases, making it, quote, a highly underrated environmental toxin. Hydrogen is an element that exists naturally, and tritium is hydrogen that is radioactive. It replaces stable hydrogen in water molecules, making the water itself radioactive. This radioactive water is called H2O. Natural tritium exists only in minuscule amounts, but regulations allow a lot more tritium in drinking water. The U.S. EPA's limit for tritium, for example, in drinking water is about 740 times higher than natural tritium in surface waters. This is not a protective enough standard, and these standards don't even apply to drinking water from private wells or other types of water. Tritium is usually the largest radioactive release from normal nuclear power operations and is released to both air and water. Once released, tritium is nearly impossible to contain or extract out, and very small amounts of tritium can contaminate very large amounts of water. But tritium doesn't stay in water alone. Natural processes, usually through plants, can change tritium's form so that it can accumulate in food and bodies of animals and humans, increasing the damage. This graph demonstrates how tritium collects in the environment and food at various distances from reactors in Canada. While tritium collects to a much greater degree closer to where it is released, even as far as 100 kilometers away, that's about 62 miles, tritium in soil, vegetation, and foodstuffs can exceed the natural level of tritium in surface waters. If people eat these contaminated foods, there is a risk of health damage. Radiation from tritium is actually low range, not low energy, as it is often called by nuclear proponents. That means that it dumps all of its energy in a very small space. When tritium radiation does this, it causes a lot of damage in that space, especially to chromosomes and DNA, sort of like this cue ball crashing into the other balls and separating them. In fact, research shows that radiation from tritium can be over 8 times more damaging than other types of radiation. Bananas do not equal tritium, and neither do potato chips. Some radioactivity occurs naturally in food, and it carries some risk. But adding man-made tritium in addition to natural radioactivity is an additional risk, not a comparative risk. And no matter how many bananas or potato chips you eat, your body's content of the natural radioisotope found in food will never exceed a certain amount because it exists in the body independently of how much you eat. The comparison of radiation exposures to bananas or other food may make a great soundbite, but it is a deceptive comparison. Nuclear proponents know this, and now you know it. This table is of tritium water vapor releases from pressurized water reactors in the United States in 2019. This occurs during regular maintenance, but tritium is also released in water from some facilities. Tritium penetrates steel and concrete and drifts off like fog continuously, and this is in addition to any spikes in radioactive releases during refueling or other reactor maintenance procedures that are routine. We see increases of childhood leukemias around nuclear facilities. Dr. Ian Fairley, an author of this study, points to qualities of tritium that could make it a large factor in these leukemia increases, including contaminating the bone marrow of a developing fetus. On this graphic of radionuclide uptake in the pregnant body, I would point out that the fetus collects every radionuclide on this list. And do note, radioactive carbon and radioactive hydrogen, tritium, can collect in fetal tissue at twice the concentration as they do in maternal tissue. This isn't surprising since both carbon and hydrogen are basic building blocks of the human body. Healthy pregnancies are healthy futures, and this is why regulations dealing with releases of radioactivity from nuclear reactors, particularly tritium releases, need to be reframed to center and prioritize human health rather than focused on meeting arbitrary regulatory limits. The references on these next two slides are what I used to create this presentation. Thanks very much for watching.